Hi, I'm Stu Hamm, and you are watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.
Hi, and welcome to ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. You know, a lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play bass. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to learn to play bass because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com. This is the place to learn bass. I have a very special guest today, my very old friend, Stu Hamm. He's played with everybody from Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, Frank Gambale. He's put out a bunch of solo albums. He tours, he writes, he performs, he records. He's got a brand new album called Hold Fast that I've been listening to. Love it very much. An awesome lineup, including Alex Skolnick, Joel Taylor, Bubby Lewis, which I wasn't expecting. Welcome, Stu. How are you, my old friend?
I'm great. I don't know if you heard the news, but that golf course where you used to live next to, where we did the transcriptions for my first book, they're trying to tear that down and turn it into some sort of sports entertainment center, like a giant glorified Hollywood fitness or something. Anyway,
Wow.
Tragedy, trauma in the valley.
No, that didn't make the news in mid-Michigan.
I'm great. How are you? Good to see you and good to catch up with about your progeny before we started recording.
Thank you very much. You know, I was thinking about a gag I saw on Saturday Night Live years ago. There was a time when I used to like that show, and Tom Hanks was hosting, and they did a shtick where they said, "Oh, this is the fifth time you've hosted. You are entitled to spend time in the lavish five-timer lounge." And they lead him in there, and Steve Martin is in there, and Paul Simon is in there, and Elliot Gould, and they're all wearing these robes, and they give him his honorary robe. And then John Lovitz is there as the waiter. They said, "What are you doing here?" He says, "Work is work. You know, what's the difference?" So it was very funny. But why am I telling you that? Well, you have been interviewed 5 times on ForBassPlayersOnly.com. This is actually interview number 6.
Unbelievable.
You were near the beginning back in 2009.
I've known you for ages. I mean, what year was that we were doing the transcription for the Hal Leonard book? It had to be 91 or 90, right?
It was 1991. It was in the fall. My place in Studio City. There's a beautiful golf course next. Oh, never mind. I hear they're going to. That's progress.
Maybe.
Well, tell me about the new record. That is the big time far out news. I've been listening to it. I like it very much. And you mentioned in the liner notes or somewhere I read that you felt like it kind of brought out the rocker in you, the old rocker. So tell me about the record.
Hold Fast, obviously, is a collection of songs that I've been working on. I'm always composing. I have melodies, I have grooves, I have chord changes, I have ideas that I'm thinking about. But that's not really music until I can name a song or name a record or have a thematic idea of how these are all going to fit together in a cohesive thing. No one, people ask me what kind of strings I use, but no one ever asked me, why did you name that song that, right? And that's the interesting stuff. So these ideas were floating around. Obviously, things changed. For me, it was February 12th, 2020, when I was just done with a gig in Denmark. And I got a call from my daughter who said, "Hey, the borders are closing. Looks like this COVID thing is for real." And we all just loaded up the truck and went to airports and came home. And, things were a little strange about then. And since then, people trying to figure things out, as was I. So here in California, there's a little 6-week period when things opened up, and I went and I got my fingers tattooed at a janky little tattoo parlor in Sylmar. And that's what I guess started the thoughts of this record of Hold Fast, which is sort of a nautical theme. And obviously the idea of Hold Fast is that, it may be a little calm in the storm now, but, dark clouds could be on the horizon. Mike Tyson could be around the corner. you know. And the best thing to do would be to tighten down the hatches and prepare for a head and hold fast because you never know what life is coming for. And then since the last record, Diary of Patrick Xavier was, solo bass record and sort of a semi-depressing post-divorce record. I didn't say that, did I? I think I did out loud. I wanted to do something just a little more rocking, and I've been listening to more rock music. I ended up in a social group where a lot of the members were in metal bands and rock bands, and I'd never seen Testament for all the years that I met Alex, and then I got dragged to some Testament shows and Exodus shows and Iron Maiden shows and Porcupine Tree shows, and much out of my more cerebral usual listening thing, and it's fun to rock. And I got a lot of chances to play in LA where I'm invited to come down to the Whiskey and Ronnie James Dio benefit. So I don't know, life was just rocking a bit for me. So that's where I decided to take the direction of this record. I'd never had Alex in the studio before, so we had some songs that he and Joel and I had played for years live on the radio that we recorded at a Sweetwater Studios recording workshop. And I continued to write songs in a more prog rock vein, going back and listening to Yes songs and UK and King Crimson and Starcastle and all the prog rock I grew up with. And then I met Randy McStein, who was in a band as guitar player Jane Getter, who now is touring with Porcupine Tree. Did a stint as the lead guitar player in the Stu Hamm band, and also a wonderful singer. And I said, you know what, I'm going to write some vocal tunes for him. And it did, because as a bass player, it's difficult when you're writing a melody. Who's going to play that melody? What are you going to do? If the bass plays the melody and plays the bass, it sort of makes it pretty fusiony. And then you've got the balancing trick of the two bass parts. If you have the guitar play the melody, oh boy, it's a Satriani or a Vi record or whatever. So since these songs had melodies, I said, Randy, why don't you write some lyrics to them just for something different to do? And it came out great. I know so many good musicians. I was able to call Steve Ferlazzo to come in and put lots of Mellotron keyboards on it. Michael Lee Firkins was a last minute addition, playing slide on a song called Tales of My Midwestern Youth. That is just about me sitting in the cornfield discovering Yes for the first time. And Bubby Lewis, yeah, man, I've known Bubby forever, and I just love his playing, man. It's so different. And
he's from Michigan. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
He's from the Flint area.
The Flint, man, Bubby.
It's funny because I asked him, I've interviewed him, I don't know, a bunch of times. And I said, Bubby, huh? I said, do you know what Bubby means in Yiddish? And he thinks for a second and he says, Grandma. I said, that's right. Bubby and Zadie.
Well, my nickname for Skolnick is Schmendrick. So we went into a deep dive about what a Schmendrick is and the play Schmendrick. And
you have some Hebrew on your the third album, The Urge.
I do. Well, I'm a kosher ham. So
yeah. How do you say in Hebrew, if you're scared, stay home?
Exactly.
I said that to you. I said, you have Hebrew on your record? And you said, and I quote, I
used to be able to say that.
Well, now you'll have the recording of me saying it right here.
So first, Bubby added a little outro on this really spacey tune called Infinite that I'd written. That's really quiet. And that was great because I asked Randy, I said, write some just nonsense John Anderson lyrics. And at the end, give me a choir of like Elias or Sun Hello, just nonsense and angelic voices. And he did it. And Bubby just adds something completely different. And then we end up trading licks on this song called When This Is Over, which is horrible because, man, when I play, it sounds okay. And then I hear Bubby play and I just sound so square. I sound like, European, everything subdivided into 30-second notes. And anyway, it works. It works.
Speaking of titles, I have a couple of questions. To mainframe, what is that about? What does that mean?
How long do we have?
Well, just the condensed version. Is it about a computer? Is it about
that row right there?
Yeah.
are my really rare, expensive collectible Gene Wolfe novels. That's the Philip K. Dick collection. This is worth some bucks right there. Anyway, so those 12 books are the New Sun series. New Sun, Long Sun, Short Sun. As you know, to mainframe is the name of chapter 10 in Exodus from the Long Sun, as you know. As far as to what that chapter or what those books are about, we just don't have enough time to get into that discussion because Gene Wolfe writes his books on at least 3 levels.
Well, I have an easier one for you then.
But anyway, no, it's you know, there's some space floating around. There's the beeps of an astronaut, and maybe they're floating as they get closer to the end of the whirl in the long sun. They lose gravity, so they're floating in 0G as they head towards the god of the Earth, which is really computer programming, where the gods of the new sun have turned themselves into computer programming. Anyway.
Gotcha, I think.
You got me started.
How about Bad Year? I think that's my favorite, by the way. Is that like a post-COVID thing or what?
Maybe. You know, I don't know how much to tell. The tour that I did with Randy McStein was a really interesting tour, Stu Hamm tour. He was a last-minute addition because the original guitar player was unable to get a visa. Jeff Bowder's on drums, so it ended up being just the 3 of us, me tour managing, driving around in a Econoline van. Just, I don't know, 37,000 miles. It was a lot of work. It was really hard work. And we did a gig in a very small town in the middle of nowhere where the poor club owner thought it was going to be monstrous. Stu Hamm's bass player, oh, that's going to be great. We're going to build an outside stage. And they sold maybe like 12 tickets. And it was, you know, I gave him some money back. And anyway, so I said, man, you remember that gig in Jerome, Idaho. And so he wrote lyrics about that. Yeah, it was a bad year. Could have been worse. I mean, that's, you know, I don't know how deep into it. When you go into recovery and you take a real look at yourself and what you've been through and what other people have been through and survived, and you come up with better tools to deal with challenges in life. How's that for being sort of on point and a little nebulous?
Well, the lyrics say it was a bad year, but it could have been worse.
It could have been, because we made it through. We made it through. Anyway, I love that song. It's again, I mean, finally, Alex and I like trade off riffs, you know, in the bridge section of that. And I mean, I think maybe fans have been waiting for that. I've been waiting for it. I can't believe it took me that long to get Alex in the studio. And I just love that guy. He's such a sponge for knowledge and for musical knowledge and for books, and just one of the smartest, funniest, best friends I have in the world. And I got a good performance out of him. We had a blast recording it. So
yeah, he went to Hebrew school because he knows a little bit of Hebrew. There was I jammed with him in Germany at one of those Warwick things. You were at one of those, weren't you, or a couple of those?
I was at most of them, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was there like 3-4 times, but I got to jam with Alex in the showroom there. With you know, I had a bass, he had a guitar. It was a lot of fun, and I interviewed him. You're talking before about Testament concerts. His parents, I think, are like professors or something that really intellectual or
I think his dad was president of Bolt Law School at Berkeley. I mean,
okay, well, that qualifies. So
Alan Dershowitz coming over for dinner and stuff like that. Cool. But
so
doesn't mean he can't rock.
I said, how many Testament concerts have your parents been to? And he says, they've been to a couple. You know, I don't think they really got it, you know, but they were cool about it. They went, you know. But hey, there was another surprise on the record. All of a sudden, I hear this reggae groove. And I said, what is that? Oh, We Will Rock You. Oh, I know a song with that title. And then I'm listening. I said, oh my God, that's the same song. That's the Queen song that was kind of disguised. But if you really listen to it, it's that's it. Anything you want to share about that?
Well, I got Sir Bry's okay to do it because since we're buddies, I don't have to call him Sir Brian. He told me that I could call him Sir Bry. I came so close to having him on this record. Actually, he came so close to having him play on a song called Windsor Muse off just outside of Normal, which would have been great. But turns out Brian May's not the kind of guy you say, well, man, can you just plug into your laptop and play a solo? I would have had to fly over to London and rent RCA studios, and it would have cost me more money than I've ever had in my life just to get, one track on there. But he, we're bitmates. I know exactly where that song came from. I was in a hotel outside of Verona doing Euro Bass Day, and I heard this little Muzak groove going on in the background that sounded like the minor second, third, the sort of the tapping intro I do. And then I said, there's an A minor. I said, man, it kind of sounds like the intro of We Will Rock You. So I said, why don't I write like a smooth jazz reggae version of We Will Rock You? Joel, that's been a staple of my live performance forever and never been recorded. Joel and I did that first thing when we plugged in at Sweetwater Sounds, no click track, no rehearsals. There's some really good mistakes in there that there wasn't supposed to be a breakdown. But the three of us trust each other and know each other so well that when that happened, we just looked at each other and made something happen. And that's the magic in recording. The mistakes are generally the best parts.
Quahogs?
Quahogs.
Quahogs.
Those are clams. Mistakes and clams are a little bit different.
Are they? Okay. Joel, I remember when I was in LA, like in 91, he was just starting to get talked about a lot. And then he's playing with this one, and he's playing with this one. And then his career just went crazy over the last 30 years. See him on a lot of records. He's really, he's a great drummer.
One of my favorites. Like I said, I call him all the time because not only he has a really great musical vocabulary, being from Wyoming, and he could play. If you say, let's play, Bob Wills meets Wichita lineman, meets a tango. He'll give you the right groove for it, and his time is impeccable, man. I play with a lot of drummers, and their relationships to time, and some good drummers, but his time is just. Man, it's just like a butter, and we have good communication. He and I are going to be coming to a town near you, starting in about 2 weeks as we tour with Greg Howe.
Token Lounge.
Token Lounge. I'm not going to be there for that one.
West End, Michigan. No, where are you going to be?
I have to leave the tour after the 2 nights at the Iridium to go to Estonia to run my second annual Estonian Bass Oasis. And this year I have Mohini Day as a bass instructor. I have Alex Skolnick leading the kids through the thing. I have Dan Petlansky, who's a blues guitar player from South Africa. I have Craig Blundell on drums, the prog rock god from England. And the difference between my camp and all the others I've been to is there at no time where there'll be 12 bass players on stage playing Stratus. This would be a camp to sort of let people, bassists play with professional rhythm sections, right? So Alex is going to send out a couple Testament tunes, a couple of my fusion tunes. Dan's going to give him some blues tunes, YYZ. It's like, hey man, you want to see what it feels like to get up there with some pros to say, okay, shuffling G, start on the 5, 2, 3, 4. This is what it feels like. Some real life experience. It's in a beautiful small town in rural Estonia. It's a mellow hang, pretty boutiquey. We limited it to about 20 people. This year's pretty much sold out. Next year, if you want to sign up, please do, bassoasis.com. It's a wonderful, chill event.
I remember you speaking to you about a year ago, and you were telling me about it. You were excited. You sound even more excited now, having done one.
Well, because it worked, and also, man, we start the day with stretching and breathing. It's everything I always wanted to do in a camp, and we take a day off and take. They have some beautiful bogs and fens and nature there on the Latvia, Russian, Estonian border, and we just hang out, and play music, and dine and share ideas. And again, I just like the idea that people will get up and play with blues one day, prog rock one day, heavy metal with Testament, with Alex one day, and get some, and with Mohini, who knows what she's going to teach us. I can't wait to take, just sit in the front row and see what she can teach me. But just give people the experience of playing, with professionals in different musical genres.
What is the date of this event?
That would be August 27th through September 2nd.
Okay.
But obviously go to bassoasis.com, go to stuhamm.com. You can find dates and probably already sign up for next year, or there may be 2 spots open this year, I believe. 2 spots. Everything taken care of. Nice hotel, beautiful little town, lake, concerts at night. We go to clubs and sit in and play. And
Cool.
actually, a lot of people from the Warwick camp are there. Henry and Ginny and a lot of the usual, our old friends from the glory days of the Warwick base camp.
Those were fun. I have another question about Hold Fast, and you touched on it. I thought you were going to mention it when you were describing it. You said there's a choir, and I saw the Men's Warehouse Choir. What is that?
I wanted to have, again, like a group sing along for the song When This Is Over, which may again be about COVID or may not be, just about a general life lesson. When this is over, we're going to be together as one and dance in the sun with your brothers and sisters because we're all one people. And first I was going to have, like in that song, If You're Scared, Stay Home, have people do it one at a time and overdub it. And then, of course, everyone at Fort Wayne, this was on my second trip to Fort Wayne for a Sweetwater Studios recording workshop with engineer Sean Deely behind the board. We said, all the guys that work there are musicians with really good home studios because they spend half their salaries on gear, as I do. I always walk away from there with 2 suitcases full of gear. And he says, hey, man, and they're all church people out there, too. So, yeah, man, we can get a bunch of people from the warehouse. So the guy, I can't remember his name, just went out and grabbed about 10 people from the warehouse, and they sang it. We did 2 or 3 takes and blended them together. And again, it's a moment, man. There's so much artificiality in recording from samples and Pro Tools where you can correct things or redo things forever, that you have to take into mind just the spur of the moment things that'll happen. Like, hey, let's get some guys and do it now. I never thought of that. It happened. Here it is. That's incredible. Never would have thought of it.
What about the name, the Men's Warehouse Choir? Where did that come from?
Because they're all the dudes. They're all men. So I called them men. And they're a choir because they're a group of men singing. And they all work in the warehouse of Sweetwater. They're all the dudes out there in the warehouse taking your orders and putting the candy in the box and sealing them in and sending them to them. So then it's the Men's Warehouse Choir of Sweetwater.
Right up the road from me in Indiana, they are.
There you go. Uh-oh. Yeah. It's Thursday, California National Leaf Blower Day. I hope doesn't reach too far into our audio transmission.
Okay. I thought I heard something, but I don't think it detracted from
Hope they blow the leaves all the way over there to mid-Michigan.
There you go. I want to make a comment. You said something about your playing and your sound, and I had already prepared to tell you this. You have a signature sound. Nobody else sounds like you, and it just reminded me so much of the old days when you were talking earlier when we did that big project in 1991. You were sitting there with a yellow Kubicki bass on your lap with the hip shot detuner, right? And you know what else I remember? You were practicing, you were noodling around getting ready to perform the Star Spangled Banner at, what was it, a Golden State Warriors game? The Stu Spangled Banner. So yeah, I mean, you hear that, and that project that we did, that was the transcription of, I don't know, like 18 tunes or something from your first 3 albums. And I saw a name in the liner notes or on the PDF that came with your album, was Stuart Clayton, great guy over in England, redhead. And so you kind of redid that project with him 30 years later. Tell me about that.
Well, like a lot of things that go out of print that just aren't available anymore, and also through the passage of time, music that, ask Taylor Swift that you didn't own the rights to, they own the rights to. Stuart and I have also been working on, Outbound, some of the independent records that I had put on that I had put out that didn't have to be beholden publishing wise to everyone else. So we're working on the transcriptions for the new record, and it's pretty close. I mean, he knows my playing is just about as good as anyone, I think, and he's a wonderful player. And it's sometimes funny to see what he came up with as far as I didn't play it that way, but that's a good idea. So, and
Yeah.
like with your record, I'm going through it note by note to make sure that the transcriptions are correct. Because I mean, how many times have people said, about the transcription book for some Rush record, and it's not even close. So, yeah, he's a good guy.
I remember he's a great guy. He's a hardworking guy, and he's got a great business. He's always coming up with new stuff, and he does it legally. That's what I really find impressive, because a lot of guys just transcribe other people's stuff. But I remember with your project, sitting there in Studio City in my place with my Macintosh Plus computer with the 3.5-inch floppy disks. Those were the days, huh?
Ancient age. But as far as sound, man, I mean, that's, it's gear is great. But I am certainly of the belief that a bass guitar is a piece of wood that should have enough life in it to allow the strings that you put on it to vibrate. And that if you can get some good enough pickups that can capture that vibration without coloring it too much, and get it through an amplifier so people can hear it, then the sound is going to be in your fingers. And that's still what I believe. I try to use gear that amplifies my sound, not creates my sound. Obviously, GHS strings help me because I know how to use them. I've been using them for forever. EMG pickups, I know how to work those. I've been using the EMG active pickups since 1980, and now it's crazy because I had Rob Turner himself, take my bass apart. I got this new bass from Warwick that I spent like 3 months trying to get it to work, and almost there. So man, when I'm recording, it can be a bit of a fight because I know what I want, and I'm a super mellow guy. The only thing that really upsets me is when people don't think that I know what I'm talking about when it comes to my compositions or bass sound, right? Because I kind of take it seriously, and I've been doing it a long time. So when I walk into a session and the dudes, are miking up the amp and have their compressors on, I'm like, man, I mean, if I'm doing a pop song or something, yeah. But as far as, a record under my name, I know how to get my sound, and that is 99.9% DI, with everything as flat as possible to give my fingers the dynamic and the range they do. Using an amp occasionally just to fatten it up, which I did a lot more in this record because, it's more of there are times like in that song, Tales of My Midwestern Youth, where it's like a Pink Floyd song, where I'm just hitting a big low E and holding it for, 3 bars. Then you want the sound of the amp to sustain it. You don't need the clarity, but if I'm doing my solo stuff, man, I want you to be able to hear the attack and the release of every note. Whereas if you're adding compression, trying to squash it, you're taking the dynamics away from me. If you're adding amps, it's just not the tone that I know I can get, right? So I have to say there's a little bit of a push and pull with Javier, who was we mixed it together. I think tension's a little good for an artistic project. He certainly added a wonderful modern mix in the drums and a lot of just the tonal things that had I been left to my own devices, it would have just been washed out in reverb like any other, late 80s fusion-y record. But I did have to, I keep saying, I always thought if I grew up and I was a bass player and I was making my own record, I would be able to say, bass is playing the melody. It should just be a little louder there. And I just went through it again, where I went in the studio with Chad Wackerman and Toshi Inagi for Roswell Mic Company, and we did some songs, and we just mixed them down, and I just had to say to the engineer, and it's so hard because in pop music, the bass is compressed, it sort of takes up this space, and I'm okay, no, I want to take up this space, yeah. Right? And I'm like, well, I hate to tell you, I'm not telling you what to do, you're a professional engineer, but I know my music and I know what I write, and in this section, since there's no voice, and the bass is playing the melody, it just needs to be a little louder in the mix. And it's just a constant fight. Plus, Javier's in a band with no bass player.
Uh,
Animals as leaders. So what was I thinking? But anyway, it was great. He added so much to the record. Drum sounds great. We went for a really heavy drum mix. I've been listening to it like back to back with a lot of the classic records that I grew up listening to, and it sounds great. There's a lot more low end. Some of those old records are pretty thin.
yeah.
This has a really nice wide dynamic range. Sienna Digital Rainer did a great job in mastering as far as bringing out a little of the snap that was missing when we added some of the amps, the amp tracks to make it a little beefier, especially if there's someone singing. But the fallback would be you miss a little bit of the snap on the bass. So
I know exactly what you're talking about because I've done tons of recordings for my instructional stuff. And the guys would always say, no, the bass should be just in the mix because that's how it would normally sound. And if you want to turn down the guitar, I said, no, yeah, that makes sense on a cognitive level, but listening to it, that's so that was in the days when you had to go to the studio and everybody had to meet and, back in the old days. But so I don't think you mentioned Mark bass. That's part of your arsenal as well, right? You've been with them for a long time.
It is. I usually have my Mark bass Stu amp right here that I record with at home because, when I do home recording, I've got a little Lely splitter right here. So I do direct. And I also send an amp, a mic track in case that's what the client wants. And if I'm doing like a pop song, then of course that's the sound you need, and I have some preset compressions that I use if that's the sound you're looking for. If I'm doing a solo bass record of music I wrote, it's a completely different kind of thing. So again, I've worked with Mark bass a lot. I know how to get the amp out. I think they have the amp that I designed for them was intended to be a little more of a rock amp, not quite as nasally, not quite as Italian post-Giaco, if I can say that. And that's what we did. But I've used all their stuff. I know exactly how to EQ it to let it go flat. And that's just the hardest thing to teach students is that, the gear is not really going to make the sound,
Right.
And that goes as well for the effects that I use. I used, TC Electronics where, the first thing they have is a mix knob. So you can just color the sound, not create a sound. I work with Neil Jason,
I was going to mention him. Yeah. Sea Moon.
Great, man. In the trade-off on when this is over with Bubby, I use the funk machine, and it just sounds great, man. It just sounds great. He's a good friend. He's got a nice set of basses. He makes 2 Manhattan basses. We're
Right.
working on something, and so just you want the gear to amplify your sound, and I'm just fortunate 3 years in the industry that I know the people that if I'm having a problem with my pickups, I can go directly to Tommy Armstrong Levitt or Rob Turner himself, and they'll help me out. Aren't I lucky?
You are. And I remember last time I interviewed Neil, I think I interviewed him more than once, but it was at a NAMM show and he was at the booth, the Sea Moon booth, and he was just practically gushing over it. Look at this pedal. You got to check this out. Listen to this, man. So he was
Incredible.
Great guy. He's played on a lot of great records too. And then another thing that you reminded me of, I interviewed Ron Carter couple weeks ago. By the time this interview is live, that one will be up already. And he was talking about when he's in the studio, he knows where he likes to have the microphone in front of the bass because he's been doing this a long time, and he doesn't want the engineers to get too mired down with the compression and the EQ and all that stuff. He said, I got these. I got my hands.
Yeah. Well, hey man, everyone has their own ideas how to do it. It's just, again, I've been doing this for a long time and I take it seriously. And there are many situations in life where I don't know what I'm talking about. If you're going to talk about Gene Wolfe or Philip Dick, collectible first editions, or what their books may or may not be about, I'm semi-qualified. But when talking about bass and bass education and bass gear and how to learn to physically get past some hurdles to become a better bass player and understand harmony, I think I know what I'm talking about.
Great. I want to ask you about that in 1 second. There's just one other thing about the record that got my attention, and you're giving all the credits and the personnel and the producer and the engineer and Sweetwater and everything else. There is a credit there for a fashion consultant.
Well, look at me. Look at me.
Why did you give a credit to a fashion? Because of the photos. This is great photography, by the way.
That is the photographs and the art packaging were done by the lovely and talented Miss Tava Martinez, who I met through Alex Skolnick, surprisingly. Did a lot of work for the band Exodus for their last cover. Hey, look, there's a picture of her right there in her early modeling days. Look at that. Right. Oh, look, there's a picture of her and I in that rare snowstorm in LA. Anyways, yes, she's incredible. She came through with the artwork. And she also painted the pick guard.
Oh, wow.
On my Dingwall. Yes.
Well, there's something you don't see every day.
There's something you don't see every day.
The Dingwall, that, by the time I got my head around the fan fretting and the Dingwall and all that, I say, okay, I get it. I played it. I could get used to it. I interviewed, Dan Glenn, right? He's got a 6-string Dingwall bass, fan fretted, but it's fretless. Well, how could it be fan fretted and fretless? And let me explain it to you. And
right before this, I had a lesson with a guy, Christopher Fox, who was trying to get Dingwall to make him a 5-string fretless. It's just, man, it's hard enough to play. I know some people who think they play 6-string fretless in tune that don't. So I can't imagine putting in the different, the lengths of strings. Honestly, there's some things I really like about the Dingwall. It doesn't make it easier to play chords or to tap or to execute what I've learned all my years. I love the idea of the different scale strings. The 4 is cool. I'm actually going to bring this one out and just give it the test of doom and take it on the road with Joel and Greg Howe. But the 5-string, man, with that 37-inch B, I'm sold completely. That thing, when you're recording in the studio, sounds like heaven and doom at the same time, So, and if I ever play a 5-string live, that's it, man. It's so noticeable, the different scale, because what a great idea. Of course, the low string should be longer, right? Of course they should, like on a harp or a piano. Of course they should, right?
Let's pick up on what you were starting to talk about before, bass education. You're a bass educator. For Bass Players Only is a bass instruction site. Most of the people I have are about 91% male, guys in their 50s, 60s, 70s. I had a conversation today on the phone with one of my members who is 80 years old, and he just loves it. So I say that just to give you a context. I thought when I first launched this site many years ago that I was going to get the kids or the 20-year-olds, and I seem to have this older group of people, mostly men, gravitating to this site. Maybe I just look like an old guy. I don't know, but they're not trying to I don't know how old your students are, but my guys are not setting out to make a career out of it. They want to play some classic rock riffs and some blues shuffles or some walking bass lines or some funk or R&B, maybe slapping, that kind of thing. So in that context, I know you do a lot of bass education. You have a lot, courses of your own, as Johnny Carson would say, on another network. We could say True Fire, but we're friends here.
Can we say Artist Works as well?
We just did. So given that we all want the same thing for our students, what advice do you have for somebody who wants to learn to play bass? What do you think is important? What should they be thinking about?
I find it best to try to initially cater the type of education to the student. As you know, people that will sign up for me for 1 or 3 lessons, you can just give them some general ideas. It reaches a point where if the light bulb goes on, where when they realize that if they want to get better, they have to practice, that's when they either keep playing or don't show up for
Are
lessons.
you talking about 20-year-olds or 80-year-olds or?
I'm talking about anybody. I mean, because even the older cats, I don't know, man. I think that they're, unless you're, someone like maybe Jeff Berlin or Victor Wooten that can just, or Borelli Legrand or Django Reinhardt, where you can just pick up any instrument and be amazing on it. Some of us have to work at it, right? And part of playing bass is mastering some just freaking physical coordination things to get your fingers to move correctly, first of all, so that when you can get beyond all that and make music. And while you're doing that, you can learn some basic shapes. I'm big on hand positioning, on learning outlining chords, because what does the bass do? It outlines the chord. Okay, the root. So you want to get fancy, you can play the root in the fifth, above or below. Okay, now if it says minor 7 flat 5, maybe you're going to play the minor third. Okay, so let's add the major to the minor third. If you want to keep going and add the seventh, okay, then let's throw in those arpeggios, right? And as you learn these hand positions and chord positions, then your brain starts to associate the sound of those, with the way your hand is. It starts out as an exercise, which is where I personally really separate the practice of practice with the practice of playing. Because when I'm playing, I'll put my thumb over it, or I'll play a song with my pinky, or have horrible hand position, whatever, because you're just living in the moment and you're trying to make something happen. But you can be prepared for that moment, right? I believe in being prepared. Obviously, there are people, I guess, that don't just like to sit around and transcribe Arvo Part piano music for bass, or play, Zimmerman duets, with themselves, but I do. So for those people that don't, sure, you have to make it interesting. And then I also I don't know, man. I mean, some people, I'm not a New Yorker, but, I also, I don't, if when people want to say he's a tough teacher, great, man. I mean, if it's, you got to do the work, really. I can show you some tricks to make it easier, right? The other problem, of course, with adults is if you're dealing with successful people that are CEOs that are used to telling people what to do and not listening to people and think that they've become successful because they've reinvented the wheel. It's a little difficult for someone to say, well, why do you want me to play the scale in this position? Well, I can do it like this. And I'm like, dude, trust me and fake it till you make it, right? There's a reason I would like you to learn this fingering. If you'll shut up and listen to me and play it, and then it will become apparent why, and then you can go and do your own thing. Study with 1 million people. Take something from what you study from me. If it works for you, great. If it doesn't, don't call me back. Lose my number, because there's no right or wrong way to play. I mean, you've seen Rocco play with one finger, and everything that we teach against, and you see Jocko's hand positioning, and I mean, of course it's supposed to be fun. Of course it's supposed to be fun. The fun that I have in music is doing it well, I'd have to say. Is, people have, like the word jam, I don't understand what that means. Like, man, we should jam. I'm like, what? When I hear jam, I think what that means is you want me to come over to your house and play, excuse my language, play bass on like Little Wing for 2 hours while you and your amateur buddies solo over it forever. And no, I don't want to do that. That does not sound like fun for me. If you want to learn something, work on it for a goal, and let's listen. I'm so fortunate in the music that I play and the musicians I know that we listen to each other, which is so important. And just to make something happen, and the vocabulary, one little musical phrase everyone will think, oh, you're referencing this, or, oh, he's talking about chapter 10 of Exodus from the Long Sun. I should put in a musical Gene Wolfe reference there, high level stuff. I remember it was at Rolling Stones, Miles Davis, name is bass player,
Daryl Jones.
Daryl Jones. Daryl Jones goes like, someone was saying, and they asked me, he said, why don't you, hey, Stu, why don't you I go and I play at the Whiskey, and guys are, posing like that. And people say, man, why don't you look cool and jump around. And like, dude, I'm working, I'm working and I'm listening. I'm listening to what's going on and trying to react and make things happen. And someone asked Daryl that, and Daryl said, I'm listening. I'm listening like, is that someone trying to break in through the window in the basement, or is that a raccoon in the garbage? That's the point, seriously, of what I'm listening. I have fun. I have so much fun. Music has saved my life countless times over, but yeah, I take it seriously and I want to do it really well.
I think I used the word jam in this conversation with Skolnick.
Also, I think jam means different things in the East Coast and West Coast, like sessions, So, anyway,
Or
just a rant.
club dates versus casuals versus
Like
generally.
casual sessions, yeah.
What sessions?
Sessions here means work. Sessions back east sometimes meant just like get together and play.
I always think of a session as a recording studio session.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Let's talk about things that don't matter at all. Just what about the future? I know you've got to be thinking about something, or you kind of hinted at something that you were going to be doing, making a record with. Who are we talking about? What about the future? What have you got coming up that?
Yeah, right now I'm just trying to. I did a really successful Indiegogo campaign crowdfunding because, as you know, man, the music industry and COVID just changed everything, and you sort of have to sink or swim. So thanks a gabillion to everyone who helped, and it was fun as far as creating interesting perks for people, from lessons to your name on the record to recording sessions to get my demo tracks and one-on-ones, just interesting ways where people can get something, and then also to give me the money so I can create the record, right, and not have to scrimp so much and stuff, and hire wonderful people like Tava Martinez to do the art and stuff like that. So finished the fulfillment of the record, going out with Greg Howe. And I'm home for a day. Then I go to Nashville to do a little recording with some people. Then I go to Estonia to do my camp. Some things in Europe I'm doing. Got something in the works for next fall, next spring in Europe with maybe Michael Lee Firkins and maybe Chad Wackerman. Sort of thinking about my next record, which probably will be another direct left turn. Would love to tour this record, but again, with the financial logistics of bass-led rock fusion funk band, not sure what that means, right? So, and I'd love to get Randy to do it because he plays great and sings great. So who knows, man? I keep practicing. I try to get better. Work with some. I've been working with Dingwall, and we're talking about if we can come up with something worthwhile to put my name on that would be different. We have a couple of talks. Always in talks with the True Temperament guys because tuning is something that we didn't even touch on that's near and dear to my heart. I listen to more alternatively tuned piano music than anybody I know. So there's that. I continue to explore different types of music and play and listen to music and enjoy life. And hopefully I just get to grow to be a better musician, and a better bass player, and get a chance to play different varieties of music to keep me interested and engaged.
Beautiful. I didn't ask you a very important question. If somebody wants to buy this new record, Hold Fast, where should they go? How can they get it?
You can go to stuham.com. I get the physical copies, I think July 20th, and then I've got about 2 days to get out all of the pre-orders, signed and not signed, from the campaign. Obviously, I'll have them with me to sell on the Greg Howe tour and in Estonia and all future tours. But from there, you can order copies, signed copies, unsigned copies. You can also, if you really want, for just a little more money, you can order, and available now are the digital downloads, which also includes the booklet. Whereas if you get it from like Apple or whatever, they have not made it very easy to get the packaging for it. And one thing I did with this was make the packaging really nice. There's a pull-out folder. It's got a nice picture of me on one side, a collage of all the people who played on it, so you get something to play with. So obviously our fans are older enough where after a Greg House show, they're happy to come up and give me $20 and have me autograph a CD and take a selfie, and we talk for a minute and stuff like that. So then they go home, and who knows if they even have a CD player anymore, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so, um, but we're going to make the packaging. So anyway, so you can actually buy the direct download directly from me, or you can wait until the 20th and buy it from Apple or stream it, and where I won't see a penny. But that's just the way it is.
We'll see a penny, but probably.
Anyway, it's just supporting. So that's available now to download. Again, I do have 2 videos of Chad Rackaman and Toshi Yanagi from the Jimmy Kimmel Show, who's my LA guitar player, playing a couple of the songs, Hold Fast and We Will Rock You, that I'm going to be posting up a link to. You can check those out. And, teach lessons. You can sign up for lessons on my website. All good stuff, man. Just keep living and happy to be alive, and things look good. Clear sailing ahead.
That's great. Out of 6 interviews, or the 5 before this one, I can't believe I didn't ask you this, but I don't remember. So I'll ask you now my signature sign-off question. What would you be if you weren't a bass player? Something outside of music.
Well, is there money to be made in literary criticism?
Maybe for somebody. Well, on the internet, the riches are in the niches, they say. So
Maybe.
There's a group of people somewhere who are interested in that.
Some people do it. I think it would be too hard for me to be an author, because even when I write like lyrics, for the few times I've written lyrics, I just agonize over every word. So when I read like Cormac McCarthy or Thomas Pynchon, is like, man, freaking genius. Certainly, sure, I'd love to be a writer because I read all the time, and it just nothing like it. I don't know if I'd be any good at it, but I'd love to get paid to read books and give you my opinion of them.
There you go.
There you have it.
Well, what? Keep playing the bass, and if you want to write some stuff too, that's great. I would read what you write.
You're a champ, man. Hey, man, great to see you. So again, I'm really happy with the record. The mix sounds great. It's very powerful. More rock record than I put out in a while. Pretty cohesive. Some great players. Again, I'm fortunate enough to know so many musicians. I didn't have to give them any direction. I'm just going to say, hey, you show up, you play. Joel Gergel Live plays on some of it. From Randy to finally Alex and Michael Lee Firkins, and man, it came out great, and I'm super happy with it. And it's things are rocking. When you look at post-COVID and all my friends in like rock and metal bands, I don't know if anyone could have predicted just how sort of a renaissance in that sort of music there is now. But all those guys in those bands are touring nonstop. So.
Well, you should be happy with the end result. I like it. I've listened to it a lot, and I like it. And Bad Day, I told you, I think is my favorite. But or Bad Year, I mean.
Bad Year.
Bad Year is worse than a bad day. But anyway, Hold Fast is the title. It's available at stuham.com. Thank you so much for joining me today, Stu. I can't wait to do it again. And you'll be in the lounge with the 5-timers, 6-timers, and
Awesome. Go to Stu Hamm if you want to sign up for lessons, buy CDs, or sign up for next year's Estonian Bass Oasis. Thank you, John. I will talk to you soon. Best to Adam when you talk to him.
All right. Thank you. You're watching ForBassPlayersOnly.com. I'm John Liebman, founder and first baseman. A lot of people think they're too old or it's too late for them to learn how to play an instrument. So I created ForBassPlayersOnly.com for adults who want to learn to play bass, because I believe you're never too old and it's never too late to experience the joy and the pleasure of making music. ForBassPlayersOnly.com, this is the place to learn bass. Thanks again to my very special guest, my very old friend, Stuart Hamm. I will see you all next week, same time, same place. In the meantime, let's play bass.